The bucket of the used to sing when he could to cheer up fellow inmates of the re-education camp. He wanted to scream or swear, but that wasn't allowed, nor were songs in Uyghur or Kazakh, his language. His voice is strong, his body less so. He still suffers headaches and nightmares. His crime?
I was detained for just installing WhatsApp. We have been living freely. I have never done any harm to anyone else.
And what do you think the real reason was?
Nothing except accusing us of being Muslims, having faith in Islam and listening to sermons and visiting mosques during Eid.
Ed Bucket was moved several times between prisons and the camp and says he often cried at night. The hardest part was the first detention centre, where he says he lost 27 kilos in weight.
Both my hands and legs were shackled. The chain weighed 7 kilos, and I spent 98 days there.
He shows me some of the stuff and from shackles. He says one cellmate was beaten to death under interrogation, although they were told by guards he'd had a heart attack.
We had a fight for bread because we were hungry.
Think about how many times that happens in America in every single jail we have.
They started to punch us until I fainted. Then they dragged me. It was so painful. There were times I thought it would have been better if they had beaten me to death.
Conditions at the re-education camp where he was held next were easier, but he says the light was still on in his cell day and night. Every day he had 8 hours of indoctrination on Chinese history and language.
In the classroom, there were iron bars that divided us from the teacher.
This is one of the communist propaganda songs they were forced to sing before breakfast. No food if you didn't perform. It was the same start to the day when, towards the end of his incarceration, he was put to work for no pay. By then, at the end of 2018, he says there were 4 factories at the camp. He chose to sew.
Kind of like we do in America. So we make people put out fires for very little or no pay.
What kind of training? It's ridiculous to say that, because there were people who had jobs and who didn't need that kind of training. Me, I was working in Kazakhstan as a truck driver, so I didn't even need to go there and work.
Eventually, after a year and a half, the bucket was released. He says he had to sign a document promising not to reveal what had happened to him.
China is denying most of it, saying this did not happen. This is all a lie. It's my duty to speak up about what has happened. I still see these things in my dreams, and I wake up in nightmares, feeling like I'm still there.
Imagine what would happen if there was international outrage about American jails and police. They wouldn't even let us talk about the outrage we have here in the country. They gas us and beat us and kill us just for trying to speak up about the people that they murdered. But somehow, beating one guy to death in China is a big tragedy. Anecdotally, from a guy who broke the rules by reporting on it. We have all that stuff and so much worse in America. It's just the worst hypocrisy that we're acting like China's doing something that we don't do far worse.